What's up, everyone? Everyone says the standard is solved. I don't believe them. Michael Majors, if you guys listen to my podcast, you know that he likes to send me some deck lists, and this is not entirely his deck, but it is probably like 65 of his 75. So this deck is cool as hell. So it is kind of similar to the deck that I played at the Pro Tour and have been writing about and all that good stuff. But this deck is Sans combo, no Saheeli's, no Guardian, no fourth color, and it's just like, all right, if Mardu Vehicles is going to be a big deck, and, you know, maybe we've passed that point, but it's definitely going to circle around back to that point sometime. We just don't know when. If that's going to be a big deck, then we want to play Ishkana, and we're already very close to being able to play Ishkana in the deck I played at the Pro Tour. It was one of my considerations. Like, I played with some in the main deck. I considered a Traverse package, and, you know, you got to go a little bit harder to actually get Delirium with some regularity, but, so we're going to play some Ishkanas. The best card, aside from Ishkana, is Torrential Gearhulk. I think that's pretty easy, and most of the control decks just, I don't know, seem kind of lacking. It seems like they have a really tough time when they're behind. They have no good way to catch up. Their card drawing's very limited. It's not like you can Sphinx's Rev for 5 and just, like, gas up and suddenly be okay, you know? Like, you're getting ahead by inches with Glimmer of Genius. Glimmer of Genius is not a super impressive card drawing spell. And, yeah, I wanted to be a little more proactive with my Torrential Gearhulk deck. So Major sends me this list, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. This is basically all the stuff that I was thinking about. So, yeah, we have a little Delirium action going on with 2 Traverses, 3 Ishkanas. Traverse also finds Torrential Gearhulk, which is pretty nice because it effectively, like, lets you find a counter spell or a card drawer spell, you know? Like, Traverse for a Snapcaster Mage is pretty sweet, even if you can't Snapcaster the Traverse, you know? It's not really that big of a deal. So then, the rest of our deck is this Energy package, where we have Attune with Aether to fix our mana, Hardest Lightning as our early removal spell, Rogue Refiner and Servant of Conduit are kind of like our early roadblocks. Servant allows us to be a little bit more proactive with our game plan, and Rogue Refiner attacks really well. So, I like these cards. We already wanted to be kind of green because, you know, we have Traverse on 1, and I think Attune with Aether is a pretty nice fix too because lets you play like a pretty low land count, and then in the mid game you just tend to just draw more gas. And this isn't a deck that necessarily wants to hit all of its land drops up until turn 10. You know, you're good basically stopping at 6 mana. So I think that's pretty cool. We have some counter spells to go with the Gearhulk. I think Negate is just a pretty nice card right now. Does interact with the combo on the cheap. Stops things like Heart of Kirin when you're on the play, Gideon, play or draw. Against Black-Green, there's not a lot of targets, but you can certainly snipe like a Planeswalker post board or Traverse in game 1 if they're going to go get like some brutal Verdurous Gearhulk or something. And then we have Scatter to the Winds. Could be Void Shatter, could be Disallow. I think the extra tiny value for the counter spells, like the Nod goes to Scatter. There aren't a lot of things that you really want to disallow. If like hard Marvel decks with a bunch of Ulamog start popping up, then maybe Disallow's a little bit better. But right now I like Scatter. Void Shatter is fine. There are definitely some things that you want to exile, like if you get to snipe a Scrap Heap Scrounger with it, then you're pretty happy, but the odds of that happening are not very likely. So, you know, sometimes you Void Shatter their Glimmer or something, and then they can't Gearhulk it, but whatever, you know, I'd rather just have the chance to maybe make a 3-3, especially when I got some little beaters in here anyway. Ishkana is also pretty sweet because we have Aether Hub and Servant of the Conduit to potentially ding them out, so not really worth playing a Swamp, but whatever. So we got this mini energy package. I thought, you know, why not play some Marvels? Marvel's pretty nice in this deck. We have some pretty high impact hits. It's not like hitting Deep Fiend or Ulamog or anything, but it's close, you know? Gearhulk and Ishkana are no slouches, and even hitting a Glimmer probably means that you're just going to be able to Marvel again, so I like these value Marvel decks. I think they're pretty sweet. Majors' version had Dynavolt Tower, but that seemed kind of not well positioned against Mardu Vehicles and Black-Green. So I kind of just wanted the Marvels instead, and then, you know, the sideboard has more of that stuff, but last few cards, Grapple with the Past, helps you set up Delirium, rebuys an Ishkana or a Gearhulk, overall pretty good. Random Shock, just as a 5th counterspell. This could be like a K return. It could be a Natural Obsolescence. I think that's like a main deck card that people are sleeping on. And excuse me. If I could join this league and do it all over again, this would probably be an Obsolescence, or maybe I'd have an Obsolescence instead of something else. But between Torrential Gearhulk, Verdurous Gearhulk, / Walking Ballista, and vehicles, Natural Obsolescence is just really good. And if people are playing like a weirdo deck, it's probably they're playing a weirdo combo deck. That's mostly my guess. I mean, you could just play like a energy beatdown deck, I suppose. But basically, no matter what deck you're going to play against, Obsolescence is going to have some targets. 23 land, 8 fast lands. I think that's kind of a given. It can kind of bite you once you start entering the later stages of the game. You want your 6th land to ETB untapped. And you have like Spire Bluff Canal, Botanical Sanctum, and Evolving Wilds. So be careful with that. It's entirely possible that you want to cut a Spire Bluff Canal. Spire Bluff Canal probably makes the mana too good in that you could cut a canal for a basic. Your mana would still be serviceable. So at that point, there's really no reason to run the risk of playing the extra Spire Bluff Canal. So I'd be completely fine with shaving 1 or 2 of these. And then Aether Hub is just glorious, obviously. And then we got some basics. So main deck, pretty set. Sideboard, little spice. With these sorts of decks, I like having some counter spells, some removal, some extra haymakers for control mirrors or mid-range mirrors, whatever, and some sort of like card drawing spell just to increase your velocity, because that's what a lot of the games are about. So the good removal spells are actually just disenchants. So I have 1 Natural State, 1 Obsolescence, and 1 Release the Gremlins. Obviously, Release the Gremlins is the most powerful one. It's the thing that's going to allow you to kill 2 things, potentially, but this is also a deck where your opponent is probably going to bring in things like Metallic Rebuke, so I don't really want to lean on 5 mana sorceries all that much. Obviously, you can just Manic Vandal their Heart of Kirin on 3, and that's good, but I'm not convinced that that's better than just having a Natural State, so I like having the mix. It was basically just like I only wanted 1 Release the Gremlins, and I only really wanted to board in like 1 Obsolescence against Black-Green, and then past that, I think Natural State is the best one, so you end up with this weirdo 1-1 split, or 1-1-1 split, but it's basically the same thing. You have 3 disenchants, you know? A couple Kozilek's returns, no way to flash it back, but it's the front end that's the most important. It's just like killing their 2 or 3 creatures and giving you a little breathing room and stuff. Got some Tireless Trackers, which is obviously nice. We have 6 things that find us lands, 23 lands, 2 Evolving Wilds. Like, Tracker is mostly going to be on, and this is going to be one of your best cards against control. I also think the clues work really well with Aetherworks Marvel. And if they are combo, you probably want the Tower. If they are any sort of mid-range or control deck, I think you want at least the 3rd Marvel, if not the 4th one. I do want the 4th Marvel against Black-Green, though, for sure. Assuming they're more mid-rangey. Against like the super aggressive energy one, I will probably only keep 2 Marvels. And then for control mirrors, I have a negate, 2 dispel, just a few extra permission spells. It's nice that I have 4 permission spells main deck, which means that I don't have to overload my sideboard on these things. And then I have a Jace that kind of fits in this pile over here. Apparently I just can't move them. Well, that's weird. But yeah, Jace is kind of in this pile, and having 5 of these cards might be a little too much, so it's possible the Jace could go. Maybe 3rd Tracker, maybe another removal spell like a Shock or something, I don't know. Maybe another, just the 4th negate. So yeah, that's about it. I think decks like these have the potential to be not the best deck, but the deck that is best for that week, where maybe the metagame's all Black-Green, and like I play an Obsolescence or 2 main deck, cut an Ishkana, play a 3rd Marvel, and kind of like hedge against vehicles and the combo, but be really good against Black-Green. And then, you know, maybe a week later, it's like, okay, there's a lot of Mardu vehicles, so we'll put in the 3rd Ishkana, maybe have like a K return or a Shock or something main deck, maybe cut the scatters, stuff like that. So like what you expect, you definitely have to tune these sorts of decks against them, because this deck is trying to be sort of proactive, but it's not as proactive as something like Black-Green, where it doesn't necessarily matter if you get the details wrong, because ultimately you're still just trying to kill your opponent. Your deck is just a pile of creatures and removal spells, so how wrong can it be, you know? Whereas this deck, the details matter a lot, so be careful with that. But yeah, let's do some battle.